Course 5, Neuromotor Function and Social Cognition. Week 1, Overview of Neuromotor Function. The quote on this slide orients us to the content for this week and can help us think about how neuromotor function can operate in the classroom in both obvious and not so obvious ways. The quote says, "He was no student, and he had the added handicap of being left-handed in a right-handed world. His first grade teacher made him write with his right hand. He never became proficient at it, and he put much of the onus for his lackadaisical work in school on his inability to write swiftly and smoothly. Anything you can't do well and don't enjoy, you generally fall behind in," he observed. Take a moment, if you would, and think about these questions listed below. What do you think the italicized sentence says about the connection between neuromotor function and students' access to success in school? Then think about, what have you noticed in your own experiences with students who struggle with handwriting? How do they approach the task of writing? How do they think of themselves as writers? Can you think of any connections between how they think of themselves as writers and how they think of themselves as thinkers or students? For this week, our overview is as follows. First, we will define the construct of neuromotor function. Then, we will consider each of the components of neuromotor function individually: gross motor function, fine motor function, graphomotor function, and oromotor function. To begin, what is neuromotor function? Well, neuromotor function is defined most simply as the brain's coordination of muscle movements. When thinking about neuromotor function in terms of student learning, it's helpful to unpack the kinds of neuromotor function demands that are embedded in typical activities and tasks throughout the school day. Neuromotor function is easy to think about and observe in certain kinds of activities. For example, playing with balls in a physical education class. But it also operates to support or constrain participation in other kinds of activities, such as demonstrating concepts through motion, which you see here in this middle picture, or creating drawings or writing to respond to ideas, artifacts, or topics of study. Within the construct of neuromotor function, there are 4 main components. We'll start with gross motor function, which is defined as the control of large muscle movements. Gross motor function is involved in playing sports, running, jumping, and climbing. For many students with a strength or affinity for gross motor activities, including opportunities for large muscle movement into learning tasks, offers a very welcome respite from traditional school-based and classroom activities. The video link here for over, under, around, and through is an example of a lesson that incorporates gross motor functions to support students in engaging with content in new ways, and which is intended to support their interest and enjoyment at school. At the same time, these students with gross motor function weakness may have a very different experience of this lesson. They may be challenged by the learning activity itself in ways that leave them disengaged from the content or unable to participate with peers. After you've finished watching this mini lecture, please download these slides, click on the link, and think about the following questions as you view it. How do you think a student with gross motor challenge would experience those activities? How might that student respond to this lesson? What activities, classes, or parts of the school day do you think place the most demands on students' gross motor skills? And what do you think school is like in general for students with gross motor weaknesses or with gross motor strengths? The next component of neuromotor function is fine motor function. Fine motor function is defined as the control of hand movements and manual dexterity. It's important to note here that within the neurodevelopmental framework presented in this course, fine motor function is distinct from the task of writing, which is called graphomotor function. Fine motor function includes tasks at school that involve things like cutting, using small manipulatives, or creating models or projects to represent learning and understanding of content. As with gross motor function, for many students, these kinds of activities are a nice shift away from the reading and writing or discussion-based tasks that tend to dominate traditional curricula. However, for students with fine motor weakness, these same tasks can raise new challenges for them in terms of learning and participation. When you watch the video for the contraptions lesson, please keep the following questions in mind. What are the fine motor demands of that lesson? What activities, classes, or parts of the school day place the most demands on students' fine motor skills? And what do you think school is like for students with fine motor weaknesses or with fine motor strengths? Next, we have graphomotor function. Graphomotor function is the ability to use muscles in the fingers and hands to form letters legibly and easily and to maintain a comfortable grip on a writing instrument. Obviously, graphomotor function is in high demand throughout the school day, and weaknesses with this particular component of neuromotor function raise special and acute challenges for students. The task of writing, as we've talked about in other courses, Course 3 in particular, is extremely complex. It involves language, attention, higher order cognition, and memory at least. And graphomotor weaknesses complicate matters even more for students by presenting difficulties with the physical aspects of the task. So when watching this video for the Post-its lesson, please keep these questions in mind. What are the graphomotor demands built into this lesson? Now recall that this lesson will have a learning objective of speaking and listening. However, the activities of the lesson involve writing and using your hand for graphomotor function. So now how could a graphomotor weakness impact a student's participation in this Post-it activity? What activities, classes, or parts of the school day do you think place the most demands on students' graphomotor skills? And what do you think school is like for students with graphomotor weaknesses? Or what is it like for students with graphomotor strengths? Finally, oromotor function relates to the muscles in the mouth and the mouth movements that are connected to speech. Once again, the physical demands of school-based tasks involving speech are not always forefronted when designing lessons for students, but they do present distinct and important challenges for students with weaknesses in this area. When you're watching Edwina's senior presentation video, please think about the following questions to help you tune in to the oromotor demands built into this task. Think about, how does Edwina's oromotor function support her presentation? How do you think this task would be for her if she had an oromotor weakness? What activities, classes, or parts of the school day place the most demands on students' oromotor skills? And what do you think school is like for students with oromotor weaknesses or oromotor strengths? Here are your assignments for this week. Please read Pullman, pages 203 to 207, which will give you a little bit more in-depth information about neuromotor function and its components. Then you can complete the weekly assignment, Neuromotor Function and School-Based Activities. This assignment will guide you to start thinking about how neuromotor function is involved with typical assignments and tasks at school, and may help you start to think about where in your practice neuromotor function demands are embedded in tasks. And then please complete the discussion forum this week to share your initial thoughts on how neuromotor function operates in your classroom or in your work. Have fun, and I will see you on Wednesday.